So as you may have heard in my last video where I was analyzing the Blackpool Pleasure Beach 2018 roller coaster, that I broke my foot. So because of my broken foot, I won't be getting to any more parks this year. So that means it's time for me to talk about the top 10 coasters I have ridden. I will be doing a top 10 worst in a couple days, but it is now time for me to talk about the top 10 best. And of course, no top 10 list would be complete without honorable mentions. So, my honorable mentions are Great Bear at Hershey Park. I thought that coaster was a fun B&M invert. It's probably my favorite B&M invert, even though I've ridden Banshee, which will be an honorable mention on another list that we'll talk about later. But anyway, the next honorable mention is Superman Ultimate Flight. Thought that was a pretty fun flying coaster. Really loved the pretzel loop, liked the flying sensation. Mindbender at Galaxyland. This is a coaster not as many people have ridden. It does have a bit of a rattle to it, but it is really intense, and the intensity makes it all worth it. It has a good pop of airtime towards the end that you don't really expect on a coaster like this. Also, Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point. This is a coaster that used to be loved by many, but then there was a certain someone who didn't like it, and now it's not loved by as many people, but I still love it. Powder Keg at Silver Dollar City, another one of the most underrated coasters in the world. Now, I went there before Outlaw Run was built, so that will not be on this list. And the last honorable mention is Behemoth. Now, this would have made the top 10 list until there was something that happened this year that pushed another coaster ahead of it. So, you'll find out when I do number 10. At number 10, we have Phantom's Revenge, and yeah, this was the coaster I was talking about, and I thought it's been good in years past, but not quite top 10 worthy until this year, when it must have just had a really good year this year, because, wow. I know other people like it better than I do, but I thought it was better than it had been in years past this year, so it had a good year this year, and it's at number 10 for me. At number 9, we have Nitro, a ride that's a bit controversial. Now, I don't think it's as good as the Golden Ticket Awards have it up to be. They have it up at, like, number 5, and that's for the world, so obviously they like it better than I do, as I only have it at number 9, and I've ridden less than 100 coasters, but I still think it's good, and I think there are people that give it too much hate, and just because it ranks high in the Golden Ticket Awards. Kind of like what my number 7 is, so you'll see that when it comes. And at number 8, we have Skyrush. Now, I'll admit, I've been a B&M fanboy in the past. I've said that I liked Nitro better, but I'm finally gonna cave in and say, yes, Skyrush is better than Nitro, and all of you are right that think that. But I still think they're fairly close, and the people that compare them, I think they should be comparing Skyrush and El Toro, because they have a lot more in common. So, I think it's two very different rides that are compared too often, and they just happen to be close in my top 10, so yeah. And at number 7, we have Millennium Force. I told you number 7 was another controversial one that some people hate because it gets a little too much praise at the Golden Ticket Awards, but honestly, they hate it too much, I think. It is in the middle. It isn't as good as, nearly as good as the Golden Ticket Awards have it up to be, but it's not as bad as people that don't like it because it ranks high have it down to be. So, I think this ride actually has some pretty cool elements, like I think it has one of the best views on any coaster, because that view of the lake is really cool, and even though it doesn't have tunnels that are at the bottom of a drop that make you really nervous about whether you're gonna get through or not, that are the best tunnels, it does have some good tunnels on it that are pretty cool, and it isn't as intense as some of the more modern Gigas, but it was the first Giga, and those more modern Gigas that a lot of us like better wouldn't be around without this coaster, so you've got to give it some credit. Here's one you're probably not expecting. At number 6, we have Ravine Flyer 2. Now, after riding this coaster, I was like, yeah, that's a really good roller coaster. Definitely one of the best wooden coasters I've ridden. But after thinking about it more, it definitely deserves this spot because it has some insane airtime and it follows the terrain in an awesome way, and that bridge over the highway is pretty cool, and it's fast too, so this coaster definitely deserves this spot. And at number 5, we have Maverick. Now, the first time I went to Cedar Point, I was Millennium Force over Maverick because I had to wait in a really long line for Maverick, and it was just frustrating, so I put that bias towards that decision. But after going back a few times and not having to deal with that line and it breaking down and getting to ride it at night, I definitely thought Maverick was the superior ride. It is definitely deserving of this spot. At number 4, we have El Toro. Now, I rode this coaster last year, and ever since I rode it, it has been growing on me. Like, you can look at my top 10s from previously, and it's lower on them, and it's been growing on me since I got to ride it. So, after thinking about it, getting whipped over that drop, and all the airtime is pretty cool, so I think the intensity is also great, so it is deserving of this spot. I do think there are 3 coasters that I have ridden that are better than it, though, so I will be talking about them next. And now we're getting down to the really good ones, the top 3. And at number 3, we have Diamondback at Kings Island. Now, some of you may say I'm still being a B&M fanboy to have this here, but believe me, the airtime is amazing. This has the most airtime of any coaster I have ever experienced, and probably the best airtime too. So, this is one of the few coasters I've actually bought a souvenir for. It's very rare that I ever buy things when I go to parks. What does that tell you that I bought a souvenir for Diamondback? And number 2 is Goliath at Six Flags Great America. But not for the reasons you're thinking. The inversions are not the reason this is here. The reason this is here is because it has an amazing drop, and then some great bank turns with good intensity, and that airtime hill after the first bank turn provides some really good ejector air, probably the best ejector airtime hill I've ever experienced. So, yeah, I said it, it's better than the ejector hills on El Toro. So, yeah, that's why this is at number 2, because, and if you really think about it, they fit it in a pretty small space. They fit it in the space of a stand-up coaster, and when you see my top 10 worst, you'll know that I'm happy that they used this to replace a stand-up, because that stand-up probably would have been in my top 10 worst, probably the top 5 worst, actually, so I'm pretty happy this coaster is here, and yeah. Do I even need to announce it? You all know it's Leviathan, but let me tell you why. I absolutely love the drop on this, and it goes into a tunnel, which, like I said, with Millennium Force, the drop not being into a tunnel makes it less scary, but this fixed that by making the drop go into a tunnel. This is also more intense than, I found it to be more intense than Millennium Force, and then there actually is airtime from what I've experienced. So you could say I'm saying that Leviathan is basically all the mistakes that were made on Millennium Force, but were fixed, and they built a similar ride. But that's okay, because it's basically saying this was done. It wasn't perfect. It had a few mistakes. Let's go fix them, and they did. And gosh, is it an awesome ride! If you haven't checked out Leviathan, I strongly recommend going out and doing so. Thank you for watching, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe.